It's interesting, though by no means essential, to ponder what sort of films the Thousand-Year Reich would be producing in 2017. If the evacuation of Dunkirk had gone south and thrown Britain from the war, there would be little fodder for the Nazi version of Christopher Nolan to spin into a compelling drama. As it stands, many people acknowledge the near-perfect narrative arc of the Second World War, at least from the Allied side of the conflict, with its precisely defined and unambiguous heroes and villains. In fact, World War II has become such a glorious cultural memory that the task of filming it without feeding this narrative of Anglo-American exceptionalism can be a tall order. Nolan's solution to this problem is to film the Allies at their most desperate, but also their luckiest. While a subject of historical debate, it nonetheless seems that the German Colossus's inexplicable decision to halt its advance at the end of May 1940 gave the British and French the time they needed to make their escape. Nolan is hardly concerned with these historical curios, nor are the characters in Dunkirk, who dismiss the enemy's stalled advance with a single line, something about why move the tanks when they can pick us off from the air. The result is a film clearly determined not to feed the warmongers, but a film that nonetheless ends triumphantly for many of its key players. It's a paradox, the kind of which we always end up discussing when a Nolan film is released. The problem for Dunkirk, it seems, obvious from its gaudy tagline, 400,000 men couldn't get home, so home came to them, is how to tell a story of such a large scale within the conventions of a 2-hour movie. The answer is to focus upon just a few characters whom each contribute a unique perspective on the same events, land, sea, and air, with the added Nolan-esque twist of each perspective running over a different time frame, not that the film will tell you that. It's a clever solution, even if the constant cutting between the three perspectives prevents any real connection forming between the audience and the characters, one possible exception being Mark Rylance's Mr. Dawson, who delivers some fine emotion when the script calls for it. The constant cuts, combined with the film's relative brevity, also mean that much of the talent on display, Tom Hardy, Cillian Murphy, Kenneth Branagh, are given very little to do, which, I suppose, is better than multiple recitations of Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night whenever a climax is approaching. Basically, I was surprised to see Branagh spend the entire film standing on a bridge, but there it is. Otherwise, the anecdotal device works because it suggests that thousands of similar stories are playing out throughout the retreat. This structure also means that Dunkirk is unlike any other item in Nolan's filmography, being a film entirely focused on a single event. Yet Dunkirk is not the clean break from the traditional Nolan affair that audiences might have expected from the trailers. While likely the director's most pared-back effort, certainly in recent years, Dunkirk retains Nolan's obsession with time, Hans Zimmer, characters speaking like they have been ripped straight from literary fiction, see the multiple contemplations of the smallness of the English Channel, and bloodless violence. That last one is particularly baffling in a war movie, but especially one that seemed to advertise itself as depicting a truly inglorious moment in military history. If there was ever going to be a film that called for proper and liberal use of blood and dismemberment, this was certainly it. Failing to depict the proper results of violence, as Dunkirk does, actually opens it to criticism that it didn't need to invite. Moreover, Nolan's outright aversion to using blood in his films is just astoundingly strange at this point. How does the film actually differ from Nolan's usual fare? The best analogy I have for Dunkirk is Alfonso Cuarón's film Gravity, which was similarly lauded upon its arrival a few years back. Cuarón, like Nolan, came from a background of plot-centric movies like Children of Men and The Prisoner of Azkaban, which distinguished themselves with a unique directorial flair, Cuarón's obsession being the continuous long shots that first appeared in Y Tu Mamá También. Gravity was unique in Cuarón's catalogue for all but dropping plot entirely in favour of radical special effects and the best use of 3D in cinema history. It also had an aggressive half-life that meant it fell out of favour shortly after falling out of theatres. Obviously, I don't know if Nolan wanted to make a Gravity-style film, but the parallels are certainly there. Dunkirk is not a film that I think anyone will need to watch more than once, and that fact may upset his devotees. One of the pleasures of the complex, layered puzzle box films on which Nolan built his name was the invitation they extended to be endlessly rewatched and analysed till every last theory had been thoroughly vetted and then thoroughly debunked. That will not be possible with Dunkirk, for better or worse. Though in some ways a brave film, Nolan could not resist offering a neat ending to Dunkirk, with the obligatory Winston Churchill peroration, which we'll be seeing in cinemas more than once this year. It seems the trouble for Nolan is that his greatest enemy has become his own reputation, ensuring that anything other than a wholesale cinematic paradigm shift will suffice to impress his ravenous audience. Only time will tell if Dunkirk can withstand such a demand.